Hello, my dear She's. Welcome, welcome. So this is Joy Leng from She Network. She Network is a nurturing community of women supporting one another to discover and to use their strengths as superpowers to unlock happiness, success, and make a positive impact in every area of our lives. We are a safe space to support She's in using their innate strengths to empower others and themselves while living engaging and flourishing lives. Did you know that breast cancer afflicts an estimated figure of over 1 million women in the world every year? And it is the second leading cause of cancer deaths among women worldwide, second to lung cancer. Did you also know that 1 million afflicted women, almost 45% of those women live in developing countries? October is the Breast Cancer Awareness Month, and we at She Network would like to show our support for the amazing work that is done in Breast Cancer Foundation by raising funds to help their work reach out to more breast cancer patients in an impactful way. So please support us for Breast Cancer Foundation by donating at giving.sg/campaign/She Network BCF. Today, I have with me an amazing warrior who accepts and thrives despite the challenges that life throws her way. This phenomenal she is none other than Jessica Duemig. And she is a 3.5 years breast cancer survivor. She was diagnosed with a very rare and very aggressive triple negative metaplastic breast cancer in February 2017 at the young age of 32. Immediately following diagnosis, she went through several treatments, and as of February 2020, she was officially cured. Yay! Jessica wrote a book called Warrior as the guidebook that she wishes she had when she was first diagnosed. It is raw, real, and uncensored. Jessica says, my hope is that this book will educate women on what to expect as well as to encourage them to be mindful of their emotions. Cancer is a battle, but it's one that you can absolutely win. I love her positivity and her grit. So without further ado, please help me to welcome Jessica. Hi, Jessica. Welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
I love what you said about this. I love that line. And this is something that this is a fight that you can absolutely win. There's so much positivity, spirit in that quote. So I am really looking forward to our chat today. We can get to know more about you, your book, and the resilient journey that you have embarked and overcome. And first and foremost, congratulations! This year is an awesome year for you.
It is, yes. Thank you so much. It's certainly a weight off my shoulders, as you can see here, of, of being cured earlier this year, especially ahead of COVID.
Yes. Okay, so this is a little bit of a heavy topic, so it would be great if we can start the show on a fun note. Do you have something fun that you can share with us, a fun fact, something that most people actually doesn't know about you?
Wow, you didn't prep me on that question.
Jessica is like, that wasn't what we went through. That wasn't what you told me.
Fun fact, I have a Wonder Woman tattoo on my wrist commemorating my breast cancer journey. It's the Wonder Woman logo with the pink ribbon in the middle.
And it's at the back?
It's on my ribs.
On your ribs? Oh my gosh, amazing. Like I'm getting like my hair is standing because that is our official pose as I briefed you before the interview.
Yeah.
That's the Wonder Woman pose for She Network, and then you have that tattoo on your back. This is destiny, Jessica.
I guess so, yeah.
Okay, thank you for the fun fact. I'm getting like I'm really thrilled about it. Okay, so now let's dive deep. Share with us about your breast cancer journey.
Absolutely. So I was diagnosed in early 2017 with triple negative metaplastic breast cancer. super rare. It's super aggressive. It affects maybe 1% of all women who have breast cancer. Only 1% fall into this specific diagnosis. So for me, it was completely out of the blue. It woke me up one night. Again, I was in a dead sleep and woke up to this sharp shooting pain on my left side. And I kind of thought nothing of it. Flash forward about 6 weeks, maybe 2 months, and it happened again. And I was like, this is something. Like, I need to at least go to the doctor. So I did. And lo and behold, through all the tests, it came back cancer. And it was extremely out of left field for me. And I use a lot of sports metaphors, so stop me if they're too many. But it was unexpected. It was something that, I don't have family history. I don't have the BRCA genetic mutations. And so it really, I'd never seen anyone go through it, nothing. So I went through all the steps. I trusted my doctors. My surgeon said we need to do bilateral mastectomy. So cut them both off, go through chemo, and then you'll get them reconstructed down the line. And so I did. I threw in a little fertility preservation just for giggles. And that was 7 months of my life straight through, no stopping, absolute autopilot at that point. And here I am, alive to tell the tale.
Indeed. So what was your first reaction? Because as you said, there's no family history. It's so sudden. It must have been shocking. Like what went through your mind when the doctor told you the verdict of the report, the results?
Yeah, no, it was surprising for sure. I was a little bit dumbfounded. I didn't have too many words. I was fidgeting a lot. But ultimately, I kind of, it hits you like a bomb. It doesn't compute at first. But I went home, I kind of processed a little bit. And then when I finally met the surgeon and she gave me more details and more information on the treatment itself, I was like, okay, I was building my career. I had no kids, no husband, no explanation as to what this cancer, where it was coming from. And I was climbing the corporate ladder. I had no intention of slowing down. So my first reaction when I got the details and how long it would take and the process was, I don't have time for this. And I don't want to have time for this. It's such a mind game that you play with yourself that it's just, I literally said, and excuse my French, I hope it's okay. I said, doctor, I don't have time for this shit. What are we doing? And she's like, all right, well, in that case, we're doing this, and this. Done. She instilled in me right from the beginning, uber confidence. And I was like, you know what? I don't need a second opinion. I'm not going to question you. My boobs are in your hands, quite literally. And it was just a roller coaster after that, just so fast.
When you said I have no time for this, and I immediately, like, my brain went like, oh, guilty. Like, I could relate to that. Like this year, especially the second half, I've decided very deliberately to slow down. I say, enough, this is too much, this is crazy. But before that, there was literally like my personality as well. I'm like, what is this? I don't have time for this. You want, even if it's cancer, you need to schedule it in, right? Like, I can't do this. Like, hello, how dare you invade my schedule? So you said I have no time for this. My brain was like, oh my gosh, guilty. I'm so guilty of that too.
No, absolutely. I was like, can I pencil you in for like late November? I had no time.
Yeah. So that seems like a powerful reminder as well. Like something your body was trying to tell you to slow down. Maybe you were not listening.
Yeah, I think a lot of times it takes something really, really terrible for us to say, you know what is really important to me? And it's a vicious cycle because we all fall into it. Even, maybe for some people it's work, maybe for some people it's kids and husband and dog and whatever. Maybe for other people, everyone has their thing, right? But for me, it was just a reminder of like, whoa, like, think about what you just said. You don't have time to deal with cancer, but you have time for lunch. I mean, you have time for 3 o'clock meetings back to back.
Yes.
Like, take a breather. Your health matters. Go figure. and deal with this now.
Mm. So what was most challenging for you in this journey?
For me, a lot of the challenge came in the emotional and the mental side of the diagnosis, because the science is so advanced. There's so much research. There's the surgeons are so talented and so meticulous, and they're constantly striving to be better and better. So the medical side didn't bother me at all.
Mm.
I surgery, fine. Chemo, okay, it's gonna suck, but it is what it is. And then the reconstruction, whatever. Not to downplay any of that, because it certainly is a very difficult journey from the physical side. But for me, because it was so on autopilot, for me, the mental and emotional side at the end of it was like, whoa, 7 months of my life just passed. What the hell just happened? You go through it so fast, you barely have time to think. And then all of a sudden it's over and you're like, so now what do I do? You're fighting so hard for so long, and it's challenging. It's got its ups and downs for sure. There is a physical battle going on within your body, but I would say the mental side of it was the biggest challenge.
Mm. Can you elaborate further on the mental challenge? Like, what aspect of it was? I can hear that you were confused, like what just happened.
Sure.
But what else was going through your mind, and emotionally, like most of the time, what were the emotions that you have? Like, what was your emotional landscape?
Yeah, so for me, I've never been one to like lay down and take it. So I'm a fighter to start. And so there was never really a question in my head, at least, of, well, what am I going to do? Oh, woe is me. That was never part of it. It was okay, got it. Plan, win, go. That part of it was fine. But you forget as you're going through. So I did fertility preservation, which is freezing my eggs. It's IVF, basically, the first half of it. I did what would be a 6-week normal schedule in 8 days. So imagine those hormones concentrated down. I was going nuts. But
Wow.
yeah, but then in addition to that, I had just gotten off of a surgical table into IVF, basically, and then straight into chemotherapy. You can tell yourself you're going to win, you've got this, but sometimes, it looms in your mind that, or you might die. It's very scary. And as much as you try to put that out of your head, and
Mm.
for the most part, you're successful, it's still always there. It's always that the minute you have any weakness, it might creep in. And so for me, I tried so hard to keep that out of my head, and I did a good job of it. But then at the very end, my last chemotherapy appointment, I walked out of the building and I lost my mind. I cried. I almost hyperventilated, because on one hand, you're like, I never want to see you again. Adios. But on the other hand, you're like, wait, that's it? This was so consuming of my entire life for 7 months. I mean, I had multiple doctor's appointments and blood draws every single week for 7 months, 35 weeks of my life, or 28, excuse me. I can't do math, the chemo brain. But for all that time, you're just on, go get it. It's a 7-month adrenaline rush. And then you're like, whew. Again, I go back to like, what just happened? Like, I don't know if Old School is a familiar or popular movie by you guys, but for us over here, it was a big one like 10 years ago. And I always equate that to the scene where Will Ferrell is in the debate and he finishes, because it's masterful presentation. Then he's like, what happened? I blacked out. I felt like that at the end. I was like, what just happened for the last 7 months of my life? It was such a blur. And then remembering things, because your mind automatically kind of funnels out the really bad stuff.
Yes.
And makes you kind of heal yourself as you go. So you forget about it and you're like, wait a minute, was I like really out of commission for 7 months? And it's like, yes, you were. You are in super, super strong chemotherapy. You were bald for 7 months. How do
Hmm.
you not remember this? It's just crazy, you know?
Yeah, in that I can see like your mind was constantly trying to register, trying to understand what's going on without completely understanding what's going on, and then before you know it, that's it. It's all over. So I
Right.
can understand why like you broke down. Like it at some point it can become too much.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what did you learn about yourself because of this journey?
I learned that as strong as I think I am a lot of times, I am, but also that you need to kind of be vulnerable sometimes, and you need to let yourself need people. But also I think too, you know, there's so much that is more important than what we in any given day would think is important. And so when I think about just going back to what we were just talking about, how sorry, I get a little emotional, how I was like, I don't have time for this. But of all things, this is what you don't have time for. You have to take that breath. You have to stop and smell the roses. And it's so cliche, but cliches are that for a reason, because you really do have to just take a moment, breathe, and live your life, you know? I mean, for a lot of people, and I don't know how many of your viewers will resonate with this, but there's a lot of things the doctors tell you you can and you can't do. And some of them are absolute law, written in stone. You should not do X, Y, and Z. You can kind of do these things. What I found was that if I would have played by those rules 100%, I would have basically laid on a couch for 7 months. And that is not my personality. You have to live your life. You know, they'll tell you eat clean, cut out the caffeine and the soda and the tea and the whatever else, all these different things. Don't eat this, do eat that, run, walk, sleep, drive, so many different things. And you're like, you know, why are you fighting so hard to survive if you're not going to live your life? You know, and again, it goes back to that. It's so easy to forget because it's not top of mind. You know, you're going through the motions, then you come out of it and you're like, okay, well, that's over. You have to still enjoy your life. If all of a sudden the life post cancer is not fun for you, or if you enjoy eating chocolate cake and now you're not going to eat chocolate cake because it might bring back cancer, or that's a terrible example because chocolate cake doesn't cause cancer. Like that's what you have to deal with for like the rest of your life. So eat the chocolate cake, eat the sweets, drink what you want. I mean, everything within moderation, of course, but you have to live. You have to live, because again, if you're going to just be in this bubble for the rest of your life, what was the point?
Hmm. Because if you're going to live in fear, that's no living at all, right? You're always looking
Yeah.
behind your back. You're always looking at the what if. Your mind is always anxious, and what is the point of living? Whether you still have the cancer or whether the cancer is overcome, it doesn't make a difference because you're living as if like you still have the cancer.
Yeah, I'll tell you a funny story. For after treatment, you have to go see the oncologist and the surgeon every 6 months. And so I did. And, you know, in that time, yeah, the cancer's out of your body. Like the minute I had my mastectomy, for all intents and purposes, I was cancer free. That's the purpose of the mastectomy. They take off your breast tissue along with the cancer. But there's always that little thing in the back of your head, like, what if it comes back? You know, and what if I have to go through this all over again? And
Hmm.
it's really scary. So every time you touch yourself, you're like, oh my God, is that a lump? You have like a little pimple, or you have a bug bite, you know, even something as like a crumb got stuck to you, you know, and you're like, oh my God, it's cancer. So I went back to my surgeon and I was like, guys, I think I have a problem. And so she's like, okay, because you know they're very good, they're very empathetic. They're not going to look at you first and tell you you're nuts. So she's like, let's do the exam. Show me what you're talking about. And so you lay back and they do the exam, and I'm like, right there. And she's like, where? I don't feel it. I'm like, you're on it right there. And she's like, just that's your rib. rib. And I was like, I mean, I didn't know it. I never felt it before. And she's like, well, you never would have felt it before, obviously, because you had, mounds of breast tissue over it. So it's such a mind game. Again, it goes back, like, I'd like to think I would have known that was my rib, but obviously I didn't. So, it's little things like that where you have to at least find the humor in it. But at the
Yes.
same time, you're like, oh my God, I didn't know it was my rib. Like that was the real time when I was like, okay, we're done living in fear. Every little thing is not cancer. It might be your rib. You're fine. Move along and live your life. And that's what the doctors said too. They said, look, stop thinking everything's cancer. You'll know it. Like, God forbid it comes back, you will know. I'm like, all right, fair enough. Adios.
Well, I'm glad you have doctors who can have the ability to calm you down and give you sound advice, and yet still, caring enough to address your concern, but after that to set your head straight and say, look here, right? You have to live. Not everything is cancer. We are all
Right.
wired for negativity bias because that's just, it was useful for survival way in the beginning, right? But not so much now. So I guess we have to very mindfully, very deliberately rewire our brain for more positivity so that, it's all really balanced up. And it's funny to have this conversation with you because yesterday I just recorded a 3 minutes of Super Monday, which is a 3 minutes video sharing about strengths. And I was sharing about the negativity bias, how using your strengths to overcome your negativity bias, focusing on your strengths instead of what's wrong with me and what's wrong with other people or the world, but focus on what's right for a change. It takes effort because it's not natural. We are not wired that way, but it's definitely, as I'm borrowing your phrase, definitely possible and can be done. So this is a awesome time to ask you about strengths. What strengths did you develop, Jessica, as a result of this journey?
I realized that I have a lot more positivity in me than I maybe thought I did. I've always been extremely pragmatic, extremely rational, and can argue both sides. So you say cancer diagnosis, I say, okay, well, there's a 73% chance I will do X, Y, and Z. There's a 27% chance the other X, Y, and Z. And I'll weigh them and I'll do pros and cons and work myself into a tizzy and be able to see both sides of it, the negative and the positive. But then let the statistics really get into my head. And with this cancer diagnosis, I said, like I said, I don't have time for this. Let's just get through it. But with that whole getting through it, my family, my friends, they didn't really know how to react to me because I was like, guys, it's not a big deal. Like, we'll just get through this and be done. And so I kept that positive, optimistic attitude, which for me, attitude has never been an asset. Attitude has always gotten me in way more trouble than it's helped me. And for the first time in my life, my attitude of like, F this was what kept me going through and pushing through. So I learned a lot about myself in terms of being that positive, strong person and changing the negative into the positive. And that was difficult for me. And I'll tell you, sometimes I even last. So as I was doing chemotherapy, I was doing live videos through Facebook just for my group of friends so they could see how everything was going. And sometimes I would watch them back and I was like, who the heck is that? Who is this positive, optimistic person with all this perspective on the world? Who is this? This was never me before. I mean, I have good perspective, certainly, but never with this lens. So this really gave me a lens into empathy. It gave me a lens into it could have been worse, and at one point during my treatment, I think I was talking to my mom and I said, look, I'm kind of glad this happened to me, right? As opposed to someone who did not have the family bond, the support group, the financial status that I had at the time with insurance and all that. Thank God it happened to me because I'm strong enough to get through this. There's two ways you go when you get a cancer diagnosis. You either say, bring it on and fight through it, or you basically say, you know what, this is gonna suck, and I'm just gonna sit over here and cry. You know, I'm not the sit over here and cry type. So if me getting cancer took that away from someone else, you know, however this world works, then good. And my mom kind of looked at me like, who are you? Like, who are you and what did you do with Jessica? Like, this is not that I ever played the victim, but for sure that empathetic, much different perspective on the world was a major strength for me, and something I draw on now. For sure, it's been absolutely different than before. I mean, the before cancer Jess was just different.
That's beautiful. And in one of my interviews, Tough Conversations on Resilient Wednesday, I will interview people who've been through very challenging crises in their life. I have a twice cancer survivor. I have someone who grew up in the Soviet Union's regime time. And I also have someone who is a heart transplant survivor and so on. And one common thread that always occurs is they always say, actually, I'm kind of glad that this happened to me. And that's very interesting for me. And when I look back at my challenging childhood, the reality is I kind of saying the same thing as well. I'm glad that happened to me because I wouldn't be doing the work that I do. I wouldn't have the passion that I have today, if not because I went through the pain and the suffering in the past. So that is definitely a sure sign. The moment someone says that to me in some form or shape, that I'm kind of glad that happened to me. I already know, like, that's it. This person is definitely resilient, because it takes a lot of transformation, and you know, it's like the rebirth of the phoenix. It takes the fire burning, the ending, for someone to say a sentence like that.
Yeah, you know, and I've always been a speaker. I've always been really good at presentations, and I've always thought that my career in some way, shape, or form would ultimately use my voice. You know, and I've prepared for that for a long time. But I never really had much to say, if that makes sense. You know, I mean, I could spin a story, sure. But one thing that this really gave me was it helped me find my voice. You know, it really did. And I'm now such an advocate for early detection. There's unfortunately so many places in this world that the resources maybe aren't available at all, let alone in a cost efficient, non-cost prohibitive method, right? So, I mean, at bare minimum, women should be doing self breast exams once a month. Do it in the shower, do it in the bath, whatever, but feel yourself. You know your body, and you know if something is there that wasn't there last week or last month. And so I even if you can't go get mammograms, because when I was diagnosed, I was 8 years shy of the standard in the US of when you should start getting a mammogram, which is 40 with no family history. What if I would have waited? You know, my tumor went from the size of a pencil eraser, which is about this big, to the size of a gumball, which was about that big, in 2 months. What if it would have been 6 months? You know, all of a sudden, if you have this growth, I mean, hopefully I would have noticed it by the time it was that big, but you know, even if some people don't, and it grows and it metastasizes and it hits your lymph nodes, and then all of a sudden you have blood cancer and you have liver cancer. And it's just so important to, if nothing else, do your self breast exams. But this whole thing, you know, has really just given me that actual message to share with people. And now I can use my voice for something good, going back to that attitude I was talking about, rather than something maybe a little sarcastic or something. So, you know, now these days I tell everyone, whether they want to hear it or not, I'm like, did you do your mammogram? Did you do your self exam? Did you check? Did you tell someone else to do it? So, you know, I mean, I do everything that I can now to make sure people don't end up in my shoes, or at least if they are, like, so there's a big controversy right now that says early detection doesn't cure cancer. Well, no kidding. Of course not, right? We don't even know what causes the cancer, let alone how to cure it, aside from cutting it off, right? But what early detection does is it allows you to catch cancer at stage 1 instead of stage 4, right? before there's lymph node involvement, before it spreads throughout the rest of your body. Because once it does, there's no stopping it. You'll likely die early, or you'll be on medicine and really harsh chemo for the rest of your life. So no, early detection doesn't cure cancer. I mean, that's a stupid comment, in my opinion, for people to say. But it does save lives.
Definitely. So I have a cute question for you about happiness. Let's scale it. How would you scale your happiness before, during, and after on a scale of 1 to 10, and why?
I would say probably before cancer, I was at maybe like a 6 or a 7, maybe more like a 7. I was in a super corporate job, very long hours, lots and lots of pressure. And I had really not much of a social life. I was all work all the time. So probably before cancer, about a 7. I was content. Don't get me wrong. Like, that was the life I chose. That was the way I set it up. But yeah, I would say about a 7 before. And
a
then
7 is the pretty comfortable space, I guess, right? 7 is right smack
sure.
there in the middle of the second end of the scale.
Yeah. Good days, not so good days, but yeah, see average. During chemo and treatments and all, I would say I was probably at about a 5. There's nothing fun about treatments and surgeries and
Of
cancer
course.
and chemo, not at all. But I wasn't working for the first bit of the surgical recovery. And then I did go back to work. I worked almost every day during my chemo treatments after the second one. I actually switched jobs in that meantime, which was nuts. But
Wow.
I would say about a 5. So, taken from a 7, it probably dropped me down more like to a 3, but then the knowledge and the support and all that brought it even like back up to a 5. So during about a 5. And then after, I would say I'm probably around an 8 on any given day, which is, again, it goes back to not only what I learned, but again, it really like, again, I evolved, right? I appreciate things differently, and in some cases more now than I did before. And I think that has just contributed to an overall happiness. There's also a part of it where it says you've been through a lot of life when you're 30, at the time 35, and have gone through major cancer for yourself. So it again, going back to stopping smelling the roses, living your life, it's like, okay, I can be a little pickier with my life now too. Like, just because someone offers you a job doesn't mean you have to take it. Just because someone likes you on a dating app doesn't mean you have to go on a date with them. If they don't hit your bar, don't go. It's fine. And so I'm just a little bit more picky, and because of that, I'm more content. I have less stress, kind of a different stress, I guess.
Beautiful. So when you were talking about how you will scale yourself after, I noticed that in that moment you stopped and you took a breath. Right, when talk, after that is an 8. Before was a 7, and there is actually an increase after this challenging time. I think that is so that is full of promise, and I think it's very encouraging for people to hear that and to have an actual number to quantify. Wow, this is possible. Whatever challenging crisis that you're going through, there is that rainbow that can exist after this journey. And for you to say that it taught you to slow down and smell the roses, and that is actually an increase in your sense of well-being, that I think is a really priceless gift.
Yeah, and it goes back to the whole concept of like, what's really important, but also your attitude toward anything is going to really drive how your physical fight kind of turns out, right? So in one sense, where again, I go back to, you can sit there and think of yourself as a victim. Why did this happen to me? Why now? Why this? Why that? And you're never going to get those answers. And if you do get any sort of an answer, it's never going to be good enough. There is
Mm.
no good reason for someone to get cancer. It's not a thing, you know?
Mm.
So I kind of looked at that, and again, I was not this insightful before, let me tell you. But now I look at it having gone through it and I'm like, you know what? Like, maybe there is a reason. Still not good enough, but maybe it's a reason it was me instead of someone else. Maybe it was a reason was when I was 32 instead of 33 or whatever. Maybe it was a reason it was 32 and not 25. You know, so the attitude, not that that makes it okay, not that it makes the whole process any easier, but when you sit back and you try to like find a reason or a way to go on, you have to imagine that there's something you get from this. And
Mm.
again, it goes back to not having that before, and then now having learned to appreciate the little things and the big things. You know, it really just, it shows you a different level of contentment. And you say, you know, your worst day has a very low bar now, right?
Yes.
So you think about that on your everyday, something you stubbed your toe on the door frame and you're like, oh, it's the worst day ever. And then you get cancer and you're like, so then the next time you stub
Reality check.
yeah, it really is. The next time you the next time you stub your toe, you're like, oh, this sucks, the worst day ever. Or is it? Like, you know, it gives you that different perspective of like, it's got to be pretty bad to get you worse off than that time you had cancer. You know, so it's just that perspective changes everything. You know, and it's really it's liberating to some extent. It's very, very weird phenomenon.
Mm. So now I know this is how an 8 sounds like. So this is you at a scale of 8, and this is how the languaging is like, the perspective is like, and it's full of hope, possibility, and acceptance. You know, like these are really necessary ingredients to have that sustainable sense of well-being. So what has become a gift for you, and what has empowered you as a result of this journey?
Yeah, you know, so one of the big things is that, like I said a little bit earlier, in my strengths and one of my gifts is really, you know, finding my voice, finding that way to help others using the gift that I've had, the gift of gab forever. But it also let me kind of reframe my outlook on life and help other people. Because when I first finished my treatments and I was good, but not officially cured and all that, I said to myself, you know what? Cancer's over. I'm not letting this define my life. I'm moving on as if it never happened. That's really unrealistic when it's about a tenth of your life that this took
Mm.
place in. You know, and with how public it was, you know, everyone who saw me knew, not that I went out like screaming from the rooftops, but I didn't wear a wig. I went bald the whole time. I don't like to think I looked sick, but when you have no hair on your face, you can make
It's very
assumptions.
visible. Yeah, it's very
Yeah,
visible.
it's not something you could hide from. But it also, you know, as I kind of went through that and I said, you know, I don't think I can hide from this, because think about this, right? And I'm talking to anyone who's in business anywhere. You put everything on your resume, your CV, right? You put all the jobs you've had, you put all your skills, you put your education, all this. What about this journey is not all, if one, if not all of those checks those boxes, right? Hardest thing I ever dealt with. Tell me about a time when you had to overcome something terrible. Oh, you mean the time I had cancer? Great. Let's talk about that for 20 minutes. Why would I take that out of my toolbox, so to speak,
Mm.
right? Or accidentally let it slip in everyday conversation with someone who I didn't know, and then all of a sudden I have to go down the whole thing about talking about it. So all of a sudden, I took this voice, I took this perspective, and I said, you know what? When I was diagnosed, I didn't find anyone like me. Single, no kids, corporate career. So I said, I'm going to write this down. I'm going to write the book I wish I had, the guidebook I wish I had, because if
Mm.
someone would have taken my book and given it to me the day I got diagnosed, I would have been like, wow, And when you read it, it's so powerful and it's so raw. You want to know what your drains feel like? I'll tell you. You want to know how your first shower is going to be? I'll tell you. And because what I found was that the fear of the unknown is worse than the fear of death. And that's a pretty powerful statement, because again, yes, cancer could kill you, or you could get hit by a bus on your way to McDonald's, right? Either way, you're not going to sit in your house because you might get hit by a bus. You can't stop living your life because you might get cancer someday. Or if you've got cancer, you know, maybe you'll die, maybe you won't. Like, again, maybe I'll live to be 100. But again, it goes back to, here's what you need to know right here in 180 pages, you know, and now you don't need to worry about it. I'm telling you everything every possible question that I ever had, every question that was asked of me when I was doing some support group type stuff, it's all there, you know, from the physical side through the emotional and the mental side. And I think that has really been the way that my voice has kind of come together. Taking that perspective, taking that empathy, taking that knowledge that I have. It's a sorority no one wants to join, right? It is something that, it's a club no one wants to be a part of until you're in it, and you have to make the best of it. So that's what I did. You know, I wrote this book. I hope it helps people. I know for a fact that it has. So if it helps one person, I'm successful as far as I'm concerned. But, you know, that's how I really took my negative and flipped it into a positive.
Beautiful, truly inspiring. I love the title as well, Warrior. Challenge accepted. That's
Yeah.
like having talked to you, like I would be like, yeah, that's totally Jessica's vibe. Her age. So this book is such an important and inspiring resource for breast cancer patients and survivors. What is your tip for everyday women on being strong and being happy?
Yeah, I mean, look, at the end of the day, right, whether it is in the face of a medical diagnosis of yourself or someone who's very close to you, and this book really speaks to the supporters as well, whether it's medical, whether it's anything that you come across in your life. You get laid off from your job, you get a bad relationship, your dog dies, whatever it is, like, you have to find some strength in that, whatever that is, and you have to continue on with your life, and you have to live your life. You know, that's the big part of this, right? It's not the life that you thought you might have had before insert event here, right? So again, whether it's the cancer, whether it's breakup, dog died, God forbid, anything else that's terrible that could happen, you know, the before did not have this new perspective. Even if, let's just say, the person at the restaurant messes up your order, the before that happened to you doesn't exist after that has happened to you. So you have to really, like, every little bit of perspective, every event, every little thing that happens to you shifts that lens of perspective, right? And it's moving on every axis that exists. And it's changing, just like a prism in the light. Every different way you move it, you get a different color light somewhere else. You have to temper that, and you have to understand which parts you want to bring with you and which parts you want to say, you know what, I don't need that. You know, and then you live your life how you want it. Figure out what's important to you before you're forced to. You know, I mean, it's so important to figure out, do you want a family or do you not? Do you want a career or do you want this? Because all of that is gonna tilt your scales. It's gonna move your prism. You know, and the more resolute you are in that, the better vision you have forward. And again, it's through a cancer diagnosis or anything else that could happen. God forbid. You know, we don't want bad things to happen to anyone, but they do. And you can't just lay down and die. Like, I keep going back to that. Like, you have to keep moving on, right? You're not just going to stop and be like, well, game over, I'm done. Yes, and like, continue. You know, figure out what that looks like for you and strive to achieve it. And really, that's got to be your focus, because if you're distracted from that, you're never going to be content. You're never going to live up to your potential, and you're never going to be able to say, this is my life. This is how I want it to be. And look, I say a lot of this, and it's a constantly evolving practice, because I mean, there are definitely things in my life that I am not 100% in control of exactly how I want it when I want it. But I know what I want, and I'm constantly working toward that. So again, it's all about living your life in whatever capacity that is, and just knowing what that looks like for you. And that's how you be strong and happy. That's how you continue to be strong and happy.
Thank you, Jessica, for your gems of wisdom, especially after what you have gone through. I think it's especially meaningful, as it always is, when you hear that from someone who's been through something you know is pretty traumatic. So if our viewers want to have a read of your book or purchase your book, where can they get that link?
Absolutely. Yeah, you can get the link on warriorguidebook.com, but you can also search for it on Amazon. I don't know if it's international on Barnes and Noble, but you can absolutely get it on Amazon and Kindle.
Beautiful. Great. Okay, so thank you so much for coming on this show and sharing with us your amazing journey, and as well as your book. So before we end the show, do you have a self-care or self-compassion tip that you can share?
I do. I want to make sure I get it right, because it's very important. I would say that my tip is, kind of to sum up this whole thing, is to know your body. Again, no matter what you're going through, know your body. If you can, do. If you can't, rest. You know, there's nothing saying that you have to strive and strive and strive. You have to be happy. But at the end of the day, give yourself credit, right? You're doing better than you think you are. Okay. You're your worst critic. So just be happy with whatever it is that you can do in that day. And if you want to, tomorrow try to do better, but better is a relative scale. You're only talking to yourself in a mirror at that point. So give yourself some credit.
Thank you, Jessica. Yes, I think women especially needs to hear this. We are always serving other people's needs, and we always suppress our own needs, and we're not resting. We're like relentless, but there's so many things on our plates, especially for women. We are constantly multitasking, and we need to know when it's time to rest. It's time to rest. And it's great hearing from you, Jessica. So thank you so much for coming on the show and for supporting our fundraising mission for Breast Cancer Foundation. Thank you. It's been great fun and very inspiring interviewing you.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jessica. And so now we're going to end our show with what's already a tattoo on Jessica's body. We're going to end this show with a Wonder Woman pose. Okay,
Very nice.
Thank you for watching, everyone. Take care.